Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about the Umbrella Academy Season 2, Episode 8. It's called The Seven Stages. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. And there's actually a lot to talk about in this episode, because this is kind of the episode where everything kind of kicks into high gear in terms of here's what the season's actually doing, both for better and worse, I would say.
I was so into this episode for about 20 minutes, maybe. And then it hit a moment, I went, oh, Christ. And it's not that there wasn't good stuff after that, because there was, but it was all tinged with, really? This again?
Do you know the sad part is, so I think what you were talking about, although I think it's further than 20 minutes in.
Is it? I don't know.
I feel like it was later.
Like
it doesn't really matter, but I assume we're talking about the reveal of what causes the everything.
Yes.
Right? So Vanya's behind it all again. Not exactly the same circumstances, of course. There was this moment, though, where Diego's watching essentially the time footage of the assassination of JFK, which is no longer the assassination of JFK. It's just when it was supposed to happen, and instead, because there's this explosion in the FBI building, which as soon as you see the explosion in the footage, you know what it is. You're like, oh, that's Vanya. That's a Vanya explosion. And that because they think she's Russian, they think she's with the KGB, it leads to retaliation, which leads to retaliation, which, World War III, nuclear bombs,
war, yeah.
Yes, whole thing. And I feel like there's a way you could have played this where I might have respected it in a really funny way, but because it's taken itself so seriously, as far as this is concerned,
yeah.
When I saw Vanya floating out of the building, all super powered looking, and Diego's like, Vanya's the bomb. She's always the bomb. I kind of just sort of let this sigh. I'm like, really? And
that was the moment.
And I think the most frustrating part for me about this, it's not even this itself. Like, this wouldn't be that big a deal, I don't think, but it actually actively makes me dislike everything with her plot before this point, because it feels like, now, admittedly, but when we get to the ending, there is seemingly some weird connection with the kid, which I'm sure will play into something, and we'll see how that happened. But otherwise, literally, her plot up until this point could have been anything. The only important part, really, again, aside from what this kid maybe ties into later, could have been anything. She could have been anywhere doing anything for 7 episodes. It was really only this 8th episode where she's in the FBI being interrogated for potentially being a communist spy.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that's really been important to the fact that she causes everything. So when it revealed that it was her again, I was just kind of like, really?
Yeah.
Again?
That's what I was as well. Like, because all season, like, 5 comes back and he's like, well, it's Vanya, right? Of course it is. What else is it going to be?
Yeah.
And then the fact that it just is actually really disappointing.
Like I say, I think there's a way to play this where I would actually see the humor in it, but I don't think this achieves that.
Because none of the characters react to it in a funny way. None of them are like, see, told you. There's no banter about it. It's just like, well, shit, we best go stop Vanya then.
Yeah, see if like Diego's reaction was like, oh, that's fine, yeah. Or I don't know, like, the only example I can think of in my head here, you're going to hate this, but in the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, in the musical episode, when Dawn gets kidnapped, right, and someone runs in and tells them Dawn's been kidnapped, Buffy sort of shrugs and goes, must be Tuesday. And all I could feel like if someone gave that reaction, that essentially that reaction of, oh yeah, of course, Vanya again, like I might have got into the comedy of it.
Like when Diego finds out and he goes and tells all the others, and he's like, it's Vanya, and I'm like, none of them are just going to go, well, yeah. Obviously, we figured that a week ago. That's why we've been, trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But that was everyone's first thought.
Because I was having this weird up and down with this episode where at the start I had this thought, and it wasn't so much a complaint because I kind of appreciated that it was kind of just doing something else, but with Five's whole thing where his plan is to go and meet himself, his older, well, technically younger, but older looking self in Dallas, because as it was set up in season 1, he did come to this time period on the day of the assassination.
Yes.
And it's doing all the jokes of like, okay, the 7 stages of thing, ending with homicidal tendencies or whatever, yeah.
Homicidal rage.
And I did think to myself, all this plan that he's doing right now, he says is to get the briefcase so they can go home. But, I mean, I guess he's just assuming that the handler's keeping her word and that the apocalypse from 2019 isn't happening still. because he doesn't really seem concerned about that.
I wonder if his plan is just to go back before that apocalypse and try again.
Oh yeah, maybe.
And just fix it.
But it felt like it was like just ignoring the assassination / doomsday of the 60s, right? That's what it felt like it was ignoring. And then,
yeah, I think it was working on the assumption for him, though, that they were the cause, and by taking them out of it, it would not happen, I guess.
Technically it was right. Obviously, they had to get to Vanya quick enough for that to be effective, but it felt like it was kind of ignoring it for this other thing, but again, it was fine, because like you say, it might have prevented it anyway, and blah, blah, blah. So it was funny to me later on in the episode where it so, like, went even deeper into what causes the doomsday in the 60s. It felt like it was almost making me think it was less important, but then sort of put me back on it again.
Yeah, and just something that, we were talking about last episode is kind of how technically it's been kind of counting down the days, and we haven't really felt like it's been getting closer. I did not realize we were on the day of.
No, see, I don't know what the first point is. I realized it was the day of the assassination, but I went, wait, what? Really? We're here already? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that was me too.
I had no idea, which, is... It's a problem for momentum's sake. It's a problem for feeling that we're ramping up to
it's not a problem specific to this episode. It's just we didn't realize how bad the problem was until it highlighted it here that, wait, that feels really weird, and it kind of comes out of it almost comes out of nowhere, is the way it feels. Like they've done so little prep for this, really, when you think about it.
And some of the most fun stuff, I think, is Five and himself, and...
Yes.
But I think it was a point where they were both scratching at the same time and farting, because that was one of the stages as well. And like old Five, and again, I mean previous timeline Five, but I'm calling him old Five because he's the old man, right? Just make that clear.
Yes.
But old man Five is basically like, hey, how about we do this plan instead, Luther? Because he's not seen Luther since he was a kid. This version of Five, so he's when he realizes it's him, he's actually quite sort of touched by seeing him. But when he's in the bathroom later, he's like, okay, how about we just go back earlier? We'll stop the apocalypse from ever happening, and things that, this will solve everything. And Luther's like, yeah, I guess, it does make some sense. It's not a bad plan. And he's like, and we'll just, and he's like, well, what about, young Five? What about the other Five in the other room? He's like, whack, we'll just take care of him. We'll just get him out of the picture. And Luther's like, wait, what? And of course, it was promised earlier that homicidal rage was the final stage of this. And
the old guy is just insistent that the younger, again, that's even a joke in it where he says he's young. He's like, well, actually, I'm like 2 weeks older than you. I'm like, Jesus, I forgot it was only 2 weeks. But the point was, he's there going, well, he's succumbed to the homicidal rage, so there's nothing we could do. He doesn't say homicidal rage. He says the name of the proximity thing,
the paradox, something or other.
Yeah, and Luther's like, well, what about you? It's like, no, I'm fine. Just conveniently.
Yeah, it was fun watching them both kind of like sit there like and be twitchy and like
they have the exact same mannerisms, so really good acting.
Yeah, everything's fine. Yeah, like just sort of like, I don't know, that stuff was entertaining. There wasn't much of this stuff, but I did enjoy everything with Allison and Ray and the dead body. Like he's genuinely terrified that if they catch that a black couple with this white dead man in their living room, that this is the end for him. And Klaus kind of like, he's been told to come see Allison, so he comes in, and Raymond like isn't sure if he should let him in, and Klaus just barges his way in, sees the dead body, and without
he doesn't see it at first. They have to point it out to him.
Oh sure, yeah, but as soon as he sees it, without missing a beat, he goes, "Oh, it's that kind of night. All right, burner berry." Like what would like he just immediately.
And that's when Raymond looks at Alice, is like, "You done this a lot?"
Ray is just horrified by the normalcy of this, and then later on, because we don't see Allison again really until Diego and the I forget the little dude's name, the accountant, but they beam in after he's seen the footage. And again, Ray's freaking out, and I like Diego introducing himself formally to the husband. He's like, "Oh, nice to just again Diego, almost out of character to the point where it's like there's times where Diego gets a little bit formal and it feels very un-Diego like, but it's becoming kind of a running thing that I'm kind of into.
And this is the point where Allison kind of pulls him aside. Like, look, I really wish I had time to deal with this very well deserved, a breakdown that you're having right now.
I like that line as well. I think yeah, you're having a nervous breakdown, which is very well deserved. I think that's a good line of dialogue.
Yeah, just acknowledging, like, no, you are reacting in completely the correct fashion here.
Yes.
And it sucks that I can't, help you right now, but bigger problems, end of the world shit.
Yes. And I think that's one of the weird things for me in the context of the season is that, so the three of them, Klaus, Diego, and Allison, are going to the FBI building to try and get to Vanya before things go down, and it's just weird to me that, okay, so we have a bit of momentum here. They're on their way because they know that she's the cause. They're trying to stop it, but it's kind of weird that other than Diego, no one's given a shit about this all season. It's kind of just
5 has.
Okay, 5 obviously is the main one who's given a shit. Diego didn't give a shit about the apocalypse per se. He gave a shit about the assassination. Obviously, he shifted somewhat.
Yeah, because they were so linked inherently, or at least seemingly. You kind of get away with that.
Yeah. So I don't know. It was kind of like, oh, now you care. Now that we've got 20 minutes to save the world. Now it's time to give a shit.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But no, like once they're together, everything with them together, and even before Diego's there, just Klaus and Allison together. Because they're so different in terms of character, the clashing's good fun. And even Ben saying "I regret nothing" as he's lying there in the vomit. Because Klaus is like, "Your possession privileges have been revoked." And this is why it's frustrating, where I'm actually starting to get more scenes of why I like these characters in season 1. There's definitely more of it in this back half of the season, but everything with the actual plot I kind of hate.
It makes me retroactively even more annoyed at the first half of the season. Every episode that goes on, I'm like, take the big fundamental problem out of this episode in the middle of it, that kind of taints some of it. I think this is a great episode, and I'm like, why was most of the season not this shit?
Yeah, it's frustrating on 2 accounts. One account is, well, it felt like we were wasting a lot of time, so you really could have just had less episodes, like certainly trim 2 out of the season and condense everything. And on the other hand, you're also saying, and also, why weren't we just doing this sort of stuff instead? Like, why weren't we just having these characters interact? It was so determined to do. They've all broken up. They've all got their own plot lines. And so many,
it's not the end of the world stuff that matters. It's the characters.
Yeah. And so many of their individual plot lines feel relatively inconsequential right now. I mean, the stuff with was it Dave the soldier?
Yeah.
I mean,
Gone.
Doesn't really feel like it's that important right now. And don't get me wrong, there's definitely ways where it doesn't have to be important in a plot sense, where like maybe Klaus is going through a character arc and he has to complete his arc to make a choice that he's going to make to help save the world or something, and maybe what happens in his own plot is what puts him on that journey, is what makes him make the right choice. I don't feel that they've set anything up where he's going to make any sort of choice based on what's happened with Dave this season. It doesn't feel like it anyway. Maybe they'll prove me wrong, but right now it doesn't feel like it.
The only impact that the Dave stuff has had up to this point on Klaus is that he is back on the drink.
Yes.
And that could be a big thing, but they've not played it as anything that matters.
Oh, no one
cares. Anything, they've
cares.
just played it for jokes.
Yeah, no one cares. If anything, he was enabled heavily by Allison, who I typically consider to be one of the more sensible characters.
She's the responsible big sister. I know they're all like the exact same age, but
technically not anymore.
True.
Because they all came out at different years, so like Klaus is 3 years older than say who came last, not counting 5. Well, not counting
5
him
was last.
Because he's much older anyway. But
I don't know. It might have been
maybe Vanya. I think it was Vanya actually.
Vanya or Diego. Yeah.
But he's like 3 years older than them, or at least 2.5 years older, and then
he's probably about 2 years older than Allison.
Yeah, and so on and so on. Yeah. So the point I'm making, but yeah. So yeah, I mean the Vanya stuff, like there's a scene that goes back to like Sissy and the husband, and that's just kind of whatever. The bigger stuff, of course, is that the kid is kind of like mimicking Vanya's movements, and his eyes light up just like hers. And I don't know if this is suggesting that he actually has a superpower. He actually predates everyone else who has powers, because in this universe, as far as we have known, the only people with powers are the people who were born at that time on that day.
Seemingly, yeah.
Yeah. So this would be a big deal if he does have some sort of superpower, or is this some part of her powers that she's kind of connected to him now? Maybe after she saved his life, perhaps was maybe.
Because honestly,
if remember, there was like a light that went from her mouth to his mouth, like when she was giving him mouth to
Sure.
mouth.
Yeah. I don't care. That's really. I know that's really bad, but this was a bit of like one of those elements of the episode where I'm like,
Yeah, all the stuff with her in her mind, and she's at like the dinner table with the family.
I liked just the visual of it, her digging into the brains and stuff.
The only interesting thing for that whole sequence, because as soon as it went to it when they first started like electrocuting her and stuff to like make her react, was that I felt like it turned into a music video with the lighting. But the only thing that I liked about it was just seeing Luther without his bulkiness, because he looked really skinny. By comparison, obviously he's a normal, well-built dude, but there was a weird visual to see him like that, which I kind of liked. But that stuff was less. Yeah, so as much as our stuff changed, I still didn't really like any of it.
I was so close to being positive for like the first half of the episode. Oh, being interrogated by the FBI. They think she's a Russian. They know presumably some level of the powers. They've seen something, or they've got reports of something.
They point out her name is Vanya, and he tricks her into speaking some Russian. And if I remember correctly, she learned a bunch of languages as a kid. I think
so. Yeah, probably. It's the sort of thing they would have done, right? Or her specifically.
Yeah.
And then there was the bit where she starts using the powers a little bit, and it's affecting him, and then they just like chloroform her. So there's like there's the idea of them going, they're going down this route. It was interesting until it just became they're just triggering her into being a bomb, and then I kind of checked out of it.
Yeah. And I think Diego's reaction, where she's like, she's always going to be the bomb. It almost makes like he wants to kill her to just sort of take out the risk because she's too dangerous. And I don't necessarily think this is. I mean, as much as we're saying it's the same thing, that Vanya's at the center of it all, I don't like that drama of it if they try and go down that path, because this isn't her losing control and destroying the world. This is someone torturing her to breaking point, and then the relatively small explosion she causes is mistaken for something that causes a diplomatic dispute.
Yeah, I mean, compared to blowing up the moon, this is small potatoes.
Yeah, it's actually more just the civilization of the world's fault that goes the way it does after this.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why they jump to this assumption, right? An explosion goes off right next to where the president's supposed to be. It's maybe 10 seconds too late to take him out. You go, okay, you assume that's an assassination attempt on him with an explosive like that. There's reasons to kind of go, okay, I understand the causality and the chain of events here, but it's not necessarily Vanya's fault. But at the same time, I'm not really interested in her being the cause of doomsday again.
No.
Without it being just funny, which it's not.
No, I think the direction for Vanya to take this season would have been something completely different. Because as much as obviously it's very different to her love interest last season, it's a very similar thing where she has a love interest, and then the drama of that love interest kind of like leads her to where she's going. Obviously, yes, this one didn't turn out to be a serial killer. I mean, that's
that's a good thing for her.
It's a good thing, but if it's too similar in terms of the beats, I think Vanya more than anyone, given what happened to her, like maybe it should have been about her trying to control her powers and being more pro that's stop whatever's happening and or something, just a completely changing dynamic. Because it made me think of Luther's final line at the episode end of episode 1 where he said, "I don't give a shit," and I feel like they've done nothing with that all season. I don't feel they've paid off the idea that Luther, because let's be honest, the last few episodes Luther's just been kind of around helping whoever is driving a plot forward. In this case, he's helping Five. Previously, he was helping. Who was he helping last episode? I don't know. It went to see Allison, I think. Yeah. So he's basically just, he's not really had much of a plot of his own, and it's kind of odd that one of the most optimistic things I had about episode 1 was his reaction at the end, because it felt like an interesting change for his character.
And that it's been a nothing thing ever since.
Yeah, it's just not really been capitalized upon. So there's definitely a lot of missed opportunities throughout the season, and this episode, while definitely one of the best of the season, because there's a lot of good things in it, it definitely has a lot more momentum than most of the seasons had. And I think that's a critique in and of itself, that it does kind of feel like it spins its wheels for 2/3 of the season and then ramps up here at the end.
It's poor pacing.
Yeah, it shouldn't feel like that, but it does. Obviously it should feel like it's ramping up a bit towards the end, because you that's part of pacing, is momentum getting into the ending. But this feels more like, we were killing time, and now all of a sudden this do things.
It was 0 to 60 in almost instant. but just at a snap point of the season.
Yeah. So, mixed bag. I guess that's ultimately what we're going to be saying about this whole season as a whole, but mixed bag.
Yeah, I
again.
mean, as much as I'm starting to enjoy these last couple episodes, and maybe I'll love the last couple, who knows? The damage is too far gone on the first half for it to be fully redeemed, I think.
Yeah, just a couple of points that I should just mention. The remaining Swede has figured out he's been duped by the handler, the fake message capsule, and there was stuff with the handler agreeing to let Diego, and Diego watching the orientation film, which apparently was 90 minutes long. Obviously, he skipped out after the first one.
Yeah, and it had a little
cartoon.
1920s cartoon mascot.
Yeah, so, and I get what they're doing with that. It's kind of a Fallout-esque / Bioshock kind of style of quirkiness to I get what they're doing with that. It's funny actually, because when it started doing the weird stuff with Vanya, where like the water our feet were in turned into eyeballs, obviously just in our mind, and then obviously all the brain eating stuff, I was kind of like, it's kind of weird how the surrealness of this section has made me notice just how unsurreal the rest of the season has been for the most part. It's been very kind of bland, even compared to season 1, I think.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
It's not so much that I think this stuff's bad. It's just that it really stuck out to me that it's been missing a lot of the season. This stuff.
I agree. It's quite funny, to the point where season 1 we were comparing this a lot to Doom Patrol. Not even in quality, just in tone, style, the surreal weirdness. Right? If this had been what the show was from the start, this tone, we would never be comparing them.
No, never. No. So yeah, and it's funny because I really want to see what everyone else is seeing in season 2, because I'm seeing a lot of people who do love season 2 way more than season 1, and I'm seeing, I saw people arguing, Doom Patrol versus Umbrella Academy, and there was a lot of people who were, on our side of the conversation, which was start, Doom Patrol, no question. But I was seeing a lot of people say, well, season 2 of Umbrella Academy kind of gives it the edge, and I certainly haven't seen evidence of that yet for me. I mean, we'll see.
If anything, for me, this has made it less of a competition.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, I agree. And for me, it never really was anyway. But
no, Doom Patrol was always a step above for us. But I mean, it was closer.
Yeah. So, but hey, but no, we shan't rant on negatively any longer. We got 2 more episodes, and there was things to like in this episode. We pointed out some of them. I think you could hear our joy of some of it, but. We'll see where it goes now with 2 final episodes. Hopefully we'll be back tomorrow with episode 9. Let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. You can get us on the Twitters at mail_fuzz for channel updates. You can support us financially over at patreon.com/mailfuzztv for as little as $1 per month. And look out for The Boys Season 2 coming soon. Catch up with Season 1 if you haven't. Our reviews are coming along with it. But that is it. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?